All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Being 6:30, Northwood School Board meeting, January 18th. All members present. Bills and manifests are going around. So our first order of business is opening public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the board? Everybody hear me well out back now. Maybe too well. Okay. Next on our agenda was a bus stop discussion with the parent.
Do us?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes. Would any members of the board like to address the board at this time?
I would just like to point out, just because I don't go on Facebook that much, and I was on Facebook, that I noticed that the teachers union and the pairs are doing a spaghetti dinner the night of deliberative session beforehand, and kudos to them for doing that, and they're offering childcare, so hopefully parents will take advantage of that and come out and look at the...
Feed your kids and...
Feed your kids, and it's free. So come out, feed your kids, leave them with the teachers for a little bit longer, and come to the deliberative session.
Thanks for pointing that out. Anyone else like to address the board? I can't touch things. No. Okay, we will close the open. No, thank you for reminding me. We will close the public comment session. Next on our agenda was going to be a bus stop discussion with a parent who was looking to make a request for a certain bus stop to be made near their house, and I believe that's been resolved already.
It's been resolved, and just a little update on that. Again, we still have 5 buses. It's been a challenge with balancing the time on the bus to the number of stops that we have, and we've been looking at each stop individually to see how many we can do and still arrive at school in a timely manner. We are still hopeful that in the near future we'll have the 6th bus driver, and when we get the 6th bus driver, then we'll put those full routes with all of the stops that people are used to. We'll put those online as soon as we can. So we'll probably give a week's notice for, once we get the 6th bus driver, give a week's notice, post the bus stops again. But we're hopeful that in the near future we can do that.
Will that 6th route, will it affect all the other routes, or just like 2 or 3?
I don't think it will affect all the other routes, but it could affect 2 or 3 of them. So we'll repost all the routes just so everybody's clear on where everything's going.
Great. Okay, in our packet, starting on page 18, we have minutes from our last meeting.
Motion to approve the public session minutes from December 21st, 2017.
Second. Any discussion or corrections on these? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstaining? 2 abstentions?
I wasn't here either.
Kayaking?
What are we doing?
2
abstentions?
Yeah, 3-0, 2 abstentions.
Too soon?
It was so long ago, I can't even remember. We didn't have non-public, did we?
Oh, no, I don't think we did. Okay, moving on to the business administration report.
The business administrator, the financials start on page 23. Marjorie has been fighting a flu for the last 2 or 3 weeks, so she's taking the night off. If you have any questions on the financials, I'll be happy to bring them back and get answers for you. Just a couple of highlights. The transportation, we're starting to get a clearer picture as we get the bills in on where we're going to be with that. So we're thinking by, again, if we get the 6th bus, then that's going to add a little bit. So by mid to late February, early March, we'll give you a clear picture on that. It looks like we're going to be under our budget lines in transportation. All in all, we've still got in the neighborhood of $500,000, $534,000 on page 33 left as a balance. Again, we've got a lot encumbered. We're closing a lot of things out. We're tidying things up. As we get into the last meeting of February and the first meeting of March, we should be able to give you a lot tighter number than that, and you'll have a clear picture. But obviously, in January, we're still closing things out and getting things in place. So, any questions that you have on the financials?
I just have a question on grants. Now, do grants come through the SIU, or do they come directly to our district?
I'll let you take that, because you've been doing a lot of work on that.
Great. So you've got different grants that are structured different ways. So your largest grant is your consolidated application for your IDEA grant. So each year, the Department of Ed looks at your numbers on October 1st, and that determines your allocation for the next year. So Northwood's allocation, I don't have that with me, it's about $158,000, and then Nottingham's a little lower, and Stratford's about $108,000. What's always been done, at least as far back as I can look, is you've done a consolidated application, which gives you the ability to take your school psychologist, those SAU positions, out of the grant, and then those personnel service all three schools, Dover and Cobra, right? So that is a consolidated application out of the SAU. Your Title IIA runs through the SAU, but that's your single district allocation of about, I want to say somewhere around between $20,000 and $30,000 a year. Then your REAP, your Rural Education and Grant, runs through the SAU, but that's your own district allocation, and the same with your Title I. So each of those grants has a different grant manager. Those last three grants, those are managed out of here. Fred does the reporting and works with the project managers. But yes, they flow through the SAU and then to your district. And in a discussion with the auditors, that's pretty typical for efficiency.
So the reason I'm just asking is I don't know what, I mean, I know the budget we're looking at here in the financials is coming out of our general fund, basically, but we
Your
never.
grants are not included in your general
Right.
fund budget. They're they're sort of like a
Kind of on the
an
side.
enterprise, or maybe, I would have to ask for the nomenclature, but
Do we have something like this that shows the spending that we do for the grant?
you have a application that can be printed, and I actually have them all printed at the SAU in a folder, that shows what your activities are, your indirect costs, and what your expenditures are. And then there is an accompanying report that looks very similar to that, that just sort of corresponds to the grant and keeps track of the expenditures.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, I guess, something I can come to the SAU with
Already,
that, or if we can get
yeah.
it in a packet.
Well, I
for
need
us all
to,
to see.
I mean, it really, do you want me in your next packet to put the Northwood grants and the consolidated application in the packet?
I'd like to see it. I don't know what the board thinks, but do you guys want that included in the packet?
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, sure.
We'll take a look, I mean, if it's a
It's already
lot,
all-
if it's a lot of paperwork, and
It's already
it's too
done.
much, we can do it.
It's already printed up.
Okay.
And it's already in folders waiting for your request.
You knew it was coming.
I did.
All right, that's the only question I had.
I just want to put a bug into people's ears about, I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. It's kind of early, it's January, and I know the money's going to be different, not 534,000. It could be more, you don't know. But start thinking about stuff that the school needs in, because if we, for example, the boilers, we will probably need to put that up for bid. That's something, we'll probably talk in March, but every time we talk about it, it's too late. The tractor, we forget about it. So some of the stuff that the school needs, I don't care if it's 20 or 30 things, we're not going to give all that, but it'd be nice to know what the school needs.
Yeah, February is a good time to start that discussion, because you're right, it comes fast and furious at the end of the year. Start the discussion in February. By March, you'll have a pretty clean number there to work with, and then you can start making the decisions early.
I'd just like to point out that I'm assuming that the balance, the $3,916.66 in the school board salaries is what Keith and I do not take. And I know that there's the $1,847.09 that has been taken out. So there's about $2,000 left in there for field trip busing and stuff like that. I'd just like to point that out to teachers so that they're aware if they want to take field trips and everything. That's still in there. This isn't the time, obviously, that most field trips happen, but
There is
There's
one
time to
coming up.
plan, though.
but just so that the teachers are aware that that's still there.
Yep. Thanks. Any other questions about the financials? Okay. We'll move on to the Assistant Superintendent's report.
So it's January, and I had a competency presentation scheduled for the last meeting. The last meeting was canceled due to inclement weather. So your presentation's right behind Mr. McGuigan. It starts out with a Wordle. Wordle's just, we type it into the computer, and it comes up with all the commonly used language in the internet that has to do with competencies. We'll send you a copy of this, because a lot of the language is used frequently. I thought the best competency-based education and the state requirements about competencies are a complex topic, so I thought the best way to approach this was for me to give you a little historical context about competencies and some other information from the state, and then maybe in a month or two have another presentation about where we're at and what we're working on. I just figured that was a good way to give everybody the context. So, what was surprising for us to find out was that competencies discussions started in the late 1800s because there was an influx of secondary education students in the country, and there was a need for standardization and to issue credit. And then we shift from there to the early 1900s when we start talking about John Dewey and the progressive educators and talking about competence. We can send this to you, Suzanne.
Okay.
So you have it. But if you look on the left side, competency-based systems have to do with students advance upon mastering curriculum. So if we go back to the 1980s and 90s, that was really your age of mastery, where teachers would write goals and objectives that had to do with students meeting that at least 85% before they moved on. And then we sort of shifted away from that a little bit. But competencies include explicit, measurable, and transferable learning objectives. And the word transfer is really important because what we're looking at with competencies is transfer skills. What skills the K through 12 system is going to teach students, and they're going to leave high school with those transferable skills to post-secondary education or the world of work. So when we hear the word competencies, we want to think about transfer skills, because in Maine, competencies are called proficiencies. In different places, they're called different things, but really, they're all transfer skills. Assessment in a competency-based system is a meaningful learning activity, meaning like formative assessments that give students feedback, opportunities to practice, and then summative assessments at the end, which is sort of like the final learning activities. Students receive timely and differentiated support in and out of the classroom, in and out of the school to meet their individual learning needs. And learning outcomes emphasize competencies that include application, creation, and knowledge. So if we look through the 1900s, we have Dewey, then we have Washburn with the Winnetka plan, which everybody learned about when I was in college. And it progresses through to the 70s, where Bloom's taxonomy and mastery learning comes in. And then we jump forward to 1994, and we have a model school in Alaska who implemented a competency-based system that was used by other districts. And then we come to 2008, and that was really one of New Hampshire's. It says New Hampshire is first to launch statewide competency system that requires high schools to award credit on mastery. You'll see in another slide I have from the Department of Ed, the discussion activities around competencies started well before that. And then if we look up to 2014, we know the state of Maine has adopted proficiencies, graduation proficiencies, which are the same as competencies. And so in the region, people are moving forward with competency-based learning. So then we take some slides with permission from the Department of Ed, and really in the SCANS report, and people talked often about the SCANS report in America 2000, really all American high school students must develop a new set of competencies and foundation skills if they are to enjoy a productive, full, and satisfying life. So competencies require basic skills in reading, writing, arithmetic, mathematics, speaking, and listening, thinking skills, thinking creatively, making decisions, solving problems, seeing things in the mind's eyes, knowing how to learn and reasoning, and then the personal qualities of individual responsibility, self-esteem, sociability, self-management, and integrity.
Excuse me, does this follow the paperwork you emailed us?
Those are copies of the model companies from the state, so no, this is separate from the paperwork that I included in your,
It's not following what you emailed us?
no, those are just a copy of competencies for your information,
Thank you.
and I'll explain that towards the end. So workforce competency, there was a lot of work done with business leaders defining what effective workers need to be able to do. We're looking at allocating time, money, materials, space, and staff, interpersonal skills, information, acquiring and evaluating information, systems, and technology. So New Hampshire Business and Industry asked the question, what should they know and be able to do? And then we have the Secretary Commissioners on assessing the SCANS report from the U.S. Department of Labor that helped define what the competencies were for the state of New Hampshire. Another timeline within the state, in 1991 to 2001, there was a federal school of work funding through to the state of New Hampshire that included 4 high schools. It expanded to 12 high schools, I believe. And that was our first sort of stab in the state at competency-based education. And the finding from that was that it holds great promise for whole school reform in teaching and learning on the secondary level. And then in 2001 and 2002, the Department of Education utilized new appropriate state and local assessment monies to institute an implementation phase in some high schools. And then in 2003 to 4, it was open to all grade levels in K to 12. They identified 10 competencies. 5 were called crosscuts, or now in your packet, they're called habits of work study, or HOWS. So you can review that on your own, but basically we're talking about problem solving and decision making, self-management, communication skills, the ability to work with others, and information use, technology research, and analysis, and then 5 content-based competencies that had to do with English, language arts, math, science, social studies, and the arts. In 2005, in the minimum standards for school approval, authentic assessment should include competency-based assessment. That was a change to the minimum standards. And then we talked about some reforms in high school. We talked about extended learning opportunities, so we based on students' demonstration of competencies. So an ELO in some schools has to do with a student taking coursework and then working in an internship with somebody in that area, meeting their competencies that way, and earning high school credit. So in the year 2008 and 2009, the Department of Ed wanted competencies in place for high school courses. And if you have Infinite Campus and you have access to Infinite Campus at Co-Brown, you can see that there's a grade section and then there's a competency section. So they have competencies defined and they use a hybrid model of issuing grades, but kids still need to demonstrate their competence to get course credit. Credit can be earned through seat time or demonstration of the required competencies. So the minimum standards in that year remove the seat time requirement for high school, meaning you don't, in the elementary school you have to have so many hours a year. In high school, you can do a combination of different things. So in minimum standards for school approval in 2014, there was another change, and we talked about acknowledgement of achievement, means when a student has demonstrated achievement of district competencies or graduation competencies consistent with the law. Career and technical education means organized educational activities that include competency-based applied learning that contributes to the academic knowledge, higher order reasoning skills, and problem-solving skills. And some other things. So there's been changes in your minimum standards for school approval that are sort of gently moving people towards a competency-based system. The definitions in the standards of competency means student learning targets that represent content-specific concepts, skills, and knowledge applied within or across content domains. Specific and required types of competencies include district competencies and graduation competencies. These are 2 different things. Credit means the the record-keeping structure that is awarded to a student who demonstrated achievement, graduation competencies organized around specific credit. So that's your graduation competencies. But then there's also a requirement for district competencies, and those district competencies do apply to your high school, but they also apply to your middle school and your elementary school, because you're trying to look at a progressive system of education that's linked and vertically aligned, so kids can meet those competencies and leave school with those transfer skills. So the district competency means specific types of competencies that are common across the district and organized in developmental progressions, and we'll talk about progressions in a few minutes, that lead to the achievement of graduation competencies. And then the graduation competencies means the specific type of competencies that are common across the district and define learning expectation for each student to leave high school with. Mastery means a high level of demonstrated proficiency with regard to a competency. So it said schools must develop no later than July 1st, 2015, and I'll have you know that districts in New Hampshire are in entirely different places with this. Provide alternative means of demonstrating achievement of identified graduation competencies, and how a credit used to track achievement of graduation competencies can be earned. Your school of record has that implemented. Your K-8 schools, we're not going to talk about graduation competencies, we're going to talk about district competencies. So the local school board shall require that each school provides for the ongoing assessment of district and graduation competencies through the use of local assessments that are aligned. And of course, you have sort of an interest, you have a public academy as a high school. So they're responsible for that because they're governed by their own executive board. And then an instructional program that includes techniques for the evaluation of student outcomes, including performance assessment of district competencies. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with model competencies from the state that are in your packet, right? And so the best way that I can explain this is this way. So I'm just going to skip ahead. So we're looking for, let's talk about a student in driver's ed. This is probably the easiest way to do this. So we have to know some things, right? We have to know which side of the road to drive on. We need to know what the sign says. We need to know what the color of the sign means. We need to know about driving in dangerous conditions, right? And then we have training. And when we give somebody, I don't know what it is in New Hampshire, but my daughter goes somewhere between 110 hours of training, some with me, some with her teacher on driving. And then skills. We need to know how to turn the blinker on. We need to know how to use the brake pedal. And then experience just comes with that training, right? So the competency for driving is that somebody will be able to safely and effectively drive in a variety of conditions, right? That's really what we want the driver to do. But to have the driver do that, we need to take a look at knowledge, experience, training, skills, and also those crosscuts, like being able to control your emotions, being able to evaluate. And then hopefully we've created a great driver, right? So the education system isn't that much different. I'll back up, and some of you have seen this. The state requires that we have competencies, and they provided models for that, and your school right now is in like pre-competency work of getting all their curriculum and standards documents in place. And then what they'll have to do is go through an unpacking, similar to unpacking standards, and they'll have to unpack all that curriculum, and they'll have to align it with competencies. And probably the most effective way to do this is to use the models from the state, and you can look at those on your own. And so you've got to integrate your curricular competencies that have to do with your 5 content areas with your crosscuts, which are those soft skills, so kids enter high school ready to progress more and become competent. So the adoption of competencies in the state and aligning to competencies is one thing, but there's also some shifts that the board in the future, not right now, are going to have to consider in how we structure school. And you can do a hybrid system. You can say we don't want to do, the board has control over that piece about what it looks like, and the administration will make some recommendation as time goes on. But one of the things is about the culture of the building, and I think some of this is coming through in strategic planning. So the traditional education system says that learning happens inside a traditional classroom with no accommodations of student interest or learning styles, but a competency-based education says we have a wide range of learning experiences at school, online, and in the community. We create partnerships for individual learning pathways to accommodate student interest and learning styles. So, in a traditional education system, students are expected to master grade level college and career ready standards. In a competency system, they're expected to master competencies aligned to college and career ready standards with clear and transferable back to those transfer skills objectives. And then learning pace. Traditional system says students advance at an educator's pace of mastery, regardless of mastery or needing additional time. And then a competency-based is students receive customized supports both in and out of school to ensure they stay on pace to graduate college and career ready. So the big shift here is like, let's take K to 3, right? Or 1 to 3. Let's just take that sort of grade down there. And so I'm in Teacher A's first grade class, and I have demonstrated mastery in mathematics, but I haven't demonstrated mastery in reading. So a competency-based system removes those grade bands so I can go into a second grade math class as a first grade student while I stay in sort of my first grade home space to master my reading. So it looks at removing grade bands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it looks at establishing grade level progressions. So students are moving based on their strengths. That will be a big shift. Instruction. Right now in traditional education, we have one teacher who designs and delivers instruction with very little differentiation. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think some of our teachers do a great job differentiating, but it is hard. But in a competency-based system, they work collaboratively with community partners and develop a unique learning plan for every student based on interest, learning styles, and real-time data. Assessments in traditional education, you usually have one opportunity to take the assessment at the end of the year. In a competency-based assessment, you have formative assessments, you have summative assessments, and there's multiple opportunities to demonstrate your mastery. Grades are norm referenced in a traditional system. They reflect standards, are typically based on weighted quarters and a final exam when you get up there. But the competency-based system, the grade reflects the degree of mastery of the competencies. So you see a shift away from letter grades or a hybrid system that uses letter grades and number grades to evaluate the mastery and then to determine what also needs to be relearned so they can achieve mastery. So again, like I said before, it's sort of like driving. You bring all those skills, that experience, that knowledge together to get competent. So in a K-8 system, you're not going to look like a high school. You're going to look like this is what we're trying to get here. So we've been meeting pretty much monthly about competencies across the SAU. Stratford and Northwood are doing like alignment work right now, and then they'll align to competencies. Nottingham right now, their teachers and PLCs are actually working on competencies, and they're ready to do that. And these guys can provide a little more information because you have some PLC work going on too. So that's really like the history and overview of competencies. It's a complex topic, but we can certainly update you in a month or two on where we're at. In the meantime, I've given you copies of the habit of work studies, competencies, model competencies from the state, and all the academic competencies that have been generated. So those are in your packet for your perusal whenever it's convenient. Hey, can I just do a little plug since apparently everybody can hear us now? On the 29th, although I don't have it in front of me, right? Am I right? On the 29th at 6, we have Katie Greer coming for all 3 districts. She's internet safety consultant that's done a lot of work with police departments. She's done a lot of work with schools. She's been on TV a lot. And she's coming to the Northwood School during the day. 7th and 8th grades from all 3 schools will be here in Northwood, getting her internet safety presentation. And then at night at 6 o'clock, we're inviting the parents to come back and have a training with her on, new technologies that are concerning and what people can do. And we really, there's a link on the SAU 44 website, and there's all over social media for the school boards, and in your newsletters. And there's a sign up there that if you go in, you can sign up, and it just gives us an idea of how many people will be attending. And I really think it would be very valuable for the parents in Northwood, Nottingham, and Stratford to attend that presentation.
It was January 29th.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions about the competency presentation, or final questions for our assistant superintendent?
Superintendent, cones, those orange things that the DOT put around the town, are we going to see if they want them back, or?
Yes,
Are you
they
going to?
called, and I just need to go pick them up. It's just that all the snow and it melted, and I've got to pick them up, so,
Do you need
yeah.
any assistance with that, or?
Yeah, if you want, if you see one and you want to pick it up and bring it and drop it off at the PD, perfect.
Okay. You can do that.
The other question I had was on the enrollment report. Shows we have 233 students in Co-Brown. Co-Brown says we have 231. So I'm trying to, I'm sorry?
What was the date of the Co-Brown?
I don't know, what's in the packet?
I know you had one enrollment.
We just had 2.
Right.
I just signed 2 incomings. Well, I'm not sure what numbers you just said. 233 is in the packet.
He was off by 2.
233 is in our packet.
Yeah, I just signed 2 just tonight.
So does that include those two, or?
Printing.
I don't know.
I'm just
He
trying to
signed
figure it
2,
out because it doesn't
235.
jive
It's the
with,
same thing he says every
so
time.
if it's 235, then the budget is off by 3. If it's 233, the budget is off by 5. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
What we can do is, literally before we go to the deliberative session, at that point in time, we can take the enrollment, so we'll know exactly where we're at. It's not uncommon from, even in the next couple of weeks, to have people move in, move out. So we can, what we're planning on doing in Northwood and Nottingham is, before the deliberative session, getting the final enrollment and comparing it to the budget. And if it's up or down, you could, at the deliberative session, suggest to either add or delete.
The budget currently lists 242?
242.
242,
242.
yeah.
Which is an amount plus the 3 alt ed plus 1 homeschool.
We'll double check all the enrollments right before we go to the deliberative.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Rubin? Anything else you want to talk about? No?
No.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the principal's report. Ms. Young?
Good evening. Our report begins on page 34, and I just want to note that Kat will include her report along with ours tonight, since she wasn't able to be here, since none of us were able to be here a couple weeks ago. So on our written report, we provided some committee updates, just a few highlights. The Literacy Committee organized the spelling bee. We held that this morning. And we want to congratulate 7th grader Cecilia Mello. She is our Northwood School Spelling Bee champ, and she will be competing at the State Bee on February 24th. It was a very exciting, I don't know if any of you were able to be there, very exciting last 6 or 7 rounds. One other highlight is the building leadership team has been working on something called a pineapple chart, which is an informal peer observation model. We're really trying to capitalize on the expertise within our building. And so teachers are inviting other teachers and paraprofessionals to come in and observe briefly. at that time. So that's sort of a fledgling thing right now, but something we're really looking to expand and grow. Break down some of those barriers. Two things that I would like to invite the board to participate in. One thing we do at the Building Leadership Team each month is set an instructional focus area. This month for January, we're trying to help kids understand the relevance and real-world application of what they're learning. And one of the ways we'd like to do that is by inviting in guest speakers or videos or even emails to the teacher that the teacher could read aloud to kids, sort of how you use math in nursing or how you use math or reading, or even some of those soft skills as a police officer. So that kids can start to understand more how what they're learning now could apply in the real world. So if any of you are interested in participating in that, we invite you, or just spread the word to your friends and community members to invite them in. And I did put a plug for that in the Laker as well last week.
Sorry, what was the date?
Anytime. And it doesn't, I mean, it's what we're really focusing on for January, but I don't think anybody's going to turn you away if you wanted to come in February, so. And one other thing that I invite both board and parent participation in our main office, we have something called the Bravo Board, and it's been in place for about a year. It used to be the Kudos Board. It's an opportunity for staff to post messages to each other. Good job on this, thank you for that. And it's been really well received. We take them down each month and we read them at staff meetings, and then we give just a little token gift card or something to somebody just to make it fun. But a parent actually posted a Bravo to Ms. Helton in the office, and that sparked my thought, like, why haven't we opened it up to parents and to board members? Because I'm sure you guys have nice things to say about staff too. So if you're ever in the office, check it out and perhaps write one or more.
Right, I'm up. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to highlight a couple things here. So a picture on the next page you're going to see is a reptile eye that was done by an 8th grader, Kira Summers. She is the recipient of the New Hampshire Scholastic Art Award. She is an honorable mention. This picture does not do it justice, so I'm actually going to hand down my phone that I took a color picture of, because it was amazing. She did an amazing job. And I made sure to get it out there to the forum and the Suncook, because I was super proud of her. She did really good work on that. So here you can kind of hand it down. And then I happened to be in Mrs. Allberg's class, check out what 4th grade was doing, and they were presenting projects on different layers of the earth and the landforms, and the kids were so engaged, were so proud of what they were doing that I want to recognize them for doing that, so I kind of put it in there. I mean, we got great things happening every day. It's honestly, it's very hard to keep up getting it out there. Our teachers do an amazing job, and so do our kids, so we're definitely trying in every way we can, myself, Ms. Young, everybody's just chipping in to make sure that they get recognized for the hard work, so.
The next thing we wanted to update you on is our new domain. We had talked a few months ago about transitioning from northwood.k12.nh.us to northwoodschoolnh.org. Mr. Robert has started that transition. Our website can now be accessed using that website, that web address, and our emails can as well. The K12 one will continue to work probably indefinitely to ease that transition, and right now people are continuing to need to use that one to log into their Google accounts, but eventually everything will say Northwood School NH everywhere, but the others will still work. So that's true of your email addresses as well, of course. We wanted to update you on a couple really cool grant opportunities. Mrs. Magnuson, one of our kindergarten teachers, has applied for a grant to create a butterfly way station. So as butterflies migrate, this would be a place for them to stop, take a break, maybe reproduce a little, have some fun.
Let the kindergarten see it.
Perfect. Great things happening at Northwood School.
So this ties right in with kindergarten science curriculum. They regularly study monarch butterflies every year. Would also include 7th grade science participation, and Mrs. Lenharth is on board with this, and 7th graders would participate in sort of developing the way station, designing it, and then also maintaining it. We have a parent who is an entomologist, I think is the word, who is providing some support. And so that's really cool. She's sent the grant in. I will let you know if it's approved and ask for your approval to accept it if we get it. So that's exciting. One other thing that's not in the packet, and I will pass around, if you could pass that, please. Mrs. Legassi, at the beginning of the year, our teacher had done a Donors Choose request for a new whiteboard in her classroom. The whiteboard in there is not magnetized, it's scratched, so it doesn't erase easily, and it's just not in great shape. And she was recently notified by Donors Choose that her request had been met. We have some local donors, and we also have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as a donor, which is pretty cool. So the full amount has been reached, and it is something like $300 and something maybe, I don't remember. Oh, yeah. I have it in here. So we are asking for board approval tonight to accept that whiteboard.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on that? All in favor of approving the donation, accepting the donation, sorry?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Great. And I just, really want to put a plug in for our teachers who are exploring resources beyond what we offer within our school walls. I think it's great that they're looking beyond.
Absolutely.
Looking ahead, we're starting to familiarize ourselves and do some practice and interim assessment with the new statewide test. It's no longer called Smarter Balanced, but it will still feel a lot like Smarter Balanced, but they've improved some of the interim assessments, so you can do small chunks of tests and use that data to help target students who need reteaching or to challenge kids who are already doing grade level work. We're talking about those in PLCs. We talked about them at the last faculty meeting that we had, so we're starting to have those conversations and use that data. And then we're also starting to think ahead to summer, and we are anticipating that we'll have a program similar to what we had last year with a K through 5 program based on reading and math, and then a 6 through 8 STEM program. That was less successful last year, I think primarily because of some staffing issues. So we're really looking to refine that this year and make it even better. And then a couple other things we had from the last packet when we did not get to meet. I had mentioned that we have a Life Touch check. Our fall commission check came in from Life Touch at $840. So that, with your approval, will be deposited into the yearbook account. And then we also had a local business, RPF Environmental, offer to donate $200 to cover lunch balances for students in need. So I am looking for approval of those 2 checks.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And that is all we had. We welcome any questions or comments. Superintendent's report.
I'd just like to point out that on the donor, what is this, donorschoose.org, it points out that Mary Piper from New Hampshire has given to your school 3+ times. I don't know if anybody knows who she is, but thank you to Mary Piper.
Good.
That's actually my alias.
Mary.
Any other comments or questions or principal?
All right, I'll turn it over to Kat.
Hey, wasn't able to be here last time due to the snow, but the standards-based report card is well underway. I've worked on the mathematics section, K through 5. I brought that to the report card committee, along with a section on habits of mind and positive behaviors, and I got some feedback on that, so that's great. We've been, I've focused on creating a schedule for the review and implementation of all the different subjects in the school, so that way the board would be able to anticipate any financial resources that might be needed to purchase new materials. Again, Ms. Young mentioned that we are looking at the practice assessments and the modular assessments that have been released by the New Hampshire Department of Ed. And one of the goals that I think we'll be focused on is beginning to look at data from those assessments over time to make sure that our students are on track and that they are mastering the competencies and the standards that we want them to develop. And I've also visited the Nottingham School to look at their data meetings. They're certainly using best practices that I've seen used in other schools. So I want to make sure that going forward, over the course of time, we're able to implement those practices here as well, again, to support students. Any questions?
Can we see a mock-up of that report card when it's ready? When are you predicting that'll be ready to go?
I believe I said we'd probably be bringing that to the board in March.
March. Thanks.
We want to make sure that we get feedback from parents as well as teachers, so from all stakeholders, and I'll certainly be presenting that to Ms. Young and Mr. Alford as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I know we touched upon this, but let's move on to our enrollment report.
Enrollment report, 37, 38, 39. You can see all of our, the K-8 on page 38. There is slight fluctuation there with a couple of students that have moved in, as well as an increase in a couple of homeschool students from last time. Any particular questions you have? And again, we'll look at the high school enrollment and our homeschool 8th grade enrollment right before we go to the deliberative, so we can get the latest number.
Seeing no questions, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, I'll start on page 40. We've got a personnel report, nomination of, I'm sorry, Faye. Osella. Faye Osella, neck tutor. And you'll see some corresponding information on page 41.
Motion to approve Faye Osella, neck tutor, $13.55 an hour.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Is this the last open position we need in the next program? So we'll be full up. That's good news. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries 5-0.
Traffic flow discussion, I just put that on as a guess, an FYI. From time to time, we get phone calls from concerned parents about our traffic flow. You know that, or I think you might know that our traffic control person has had a health issue, so we've been without a crossing guard now for a couple of weeks at least, which has presented an issue. We've got that position advertised for somebody to fill in. We haven't had any takers at this point. I know that Mr. Alford and the police department have been working out there to try to solve that issue as best they can. We've had a lot of discussions with the police department as well as building administration about traffic flow. Is there a different configuration that we can utilize, sending the parents a different direction, utilizing Bow Street, in and out in the front in a different way? And there's just no good way to do it. I mean, especially at the time of day that we're doing it in the morning, you know, we've got to get parents and buses in and out of basically the same entrance and exit. Route 4 is high volume at that time of day, so that presents another issue as well. So we'll keep looking at things. We have thought of a lot of, I'll say, weird and wacky configurations in traffic flow. None of them make sense. We talked about coming in the front and sending them out Bow Street, but that it still means that we've got to get buses and parents in the same entrance, and that means that we're going to be tying parents up trying to get out of Bow Street on that side, which is a nasty little corner with a ridge coming by the gas station. So we'll keep looking at it, we'll keep working at it. You know, we're trying to encourage parents to get their children here a little bit earlier and be ready to drop them off. Every time you drop your child off and they're ready to go, it helps us with the traffic flow in and out. And in return, we'll try to get you out of the parking lot as quickly as possible. Is there anything I'm missing, Jocelyn, Adrian, or
Just a
Shane?
couple of things. Like you mentioned the earliness and having the kid ready to get out of the vehicle. And it's also the weather dependent. Because if it's a nice day out, the kids are probably going to take the bus. If it's cold and it snowed out the day before, or there's still snow on the ground, there is an influx of cars. Like today was it was pretty nasty out there. From 7:25 to 7:55, we were jam-packed, and we couldn't really do much about it. And for those that say, well, you know, we're not doing anything, well, you can't really do anything when traffic is completely at a standstill and you can't move cars. You just can't do it. So we're out there doing the best we can, Adrian and I, and there are days that are seamless, and there are days that are just like, can't do anything. Second thing, Mr. Ireland stopped me today after the basketball game. He is on a traffic control consulting group. He wanted me to collect data on how many cars are coming in, and I pretty much told him, I was like, hey, it doesn't matter. It could be seamless. It could be, 20 extra cars. It could be 30 extra cars in one day. And then he goes, well, we could do this. And it just brought to me just about an hour ago. He wants to sit down with yourself and Adrian and just Google map it and just war game the heck out of it, and to find out, see what would be maybe possible, what could we do, and he could give some ideas on that too. So he gave me some hours that he could do it, and we'll talk offline about that. So that's it.
Yeah, any ideas, we'll be glad to look at them and see what we can do. It's just, it's a tough configuration out front with Route 4 there, so just wanted to throw that out there.
So that's a good point he's brought up as far as a traffic consultant. I mean, if that doesn't work, it seems like, this has been going on for the 8 years I've been around, and we have tried at least a dozen things.
Yep.
It seems like it's time that we looked into a long-term approach. I like the idea of a Google map, but, even building a road in the back of the school or something. There's got to be a way to work with the town and stuff to improve. It's just been ongoing for way too long. And, coming in Bow Street down below here rather than up above, there's got to be a way. It'd be lovely to move the school away.
And you're
from the
absolutely
highway.
correct, Tim, that if people decided to go down Bow Street to the left, to go down Lower Bow instead of using Upper Bow, where it's a really bad intersection, it would be less traffic. We could probably do that, but parents, they don't know that, and we could inform them. But Bow Street is a very dangerous road in itself. It's very steep, and if it's not plowed correctly or sanded correctly, you're going to have a lot of high traffic and maybe some car accidents.
I'm certainly not saying that. I'm saying we need to look at ideas. An idea would be a light at Range Road, which it certainly needs one.
Ridge Road, you mean?
Ridge Road,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Ridge Road, it certainly needs one, and could that, working with the state, and could we incorporate that into some kind of a plan? I'm not saying, there's not an easy, quick answer, but we need to, at some point, this has been batted around for so long, we really need to come up with some kind of a plan centered around this school. And Ridge Road, we had a lady just a couple of years ago killed there. It's just a very dangerous intersection. And coming out of Bow up here is just ridiculously awful. It really is bad.
Dangerous.
And I hate to see parents have to come out of there with no light.
And just a caveat of that, we actually asked the state to look at Bow Street to see if they could do anything with it, and they said, there's nothing wrong with that intersection. So it's, it's an ongoing fight with, the state.
Well, but that's what the state's gonna do. I remember Maureen Mann, I couldn't think of her name, but Maureen Mann, for instance, as a state rep, was very influential in getting that light down at 107 at the other end of town. I mean, she lobbied for and worked very hard, so we need to get, our state reps now involved and show them the problem and get everybody going in a direction, but before we do that, we need to come up with some idea.
I think meeting
now
with the traffic engineer is a great start. It's definitely, should go.
Okay.
So hopefully I could have we'll have an update next,
So related, I did notice, I was here one night to pick up a student from the dance, and there were a number of cars that were backed up on Route 4, kind of a dangerous situation too, and somebody pulled out of the entrance trying to get out on the road and almost caused an accident. And that might be something we want to look into too, is maybe having parents come down Bow Street for dance pickup or something like that, just to get the traffic off the Route 4.
That had been an expectation. I think we can do better with communication
Yeah,
and
maybe
reminding
it's
parents
just a
of
matter of
that.
doing that, yeah. The only other thing I had, we were talking about our crossing guard. I just wanted to look into one thing I'd heard, and I don't know if maybe Mr. Wells, you told me this, that Mr. Goodell bought a stop sign, the light-up stop sign that he carries with its own money to be out there. I just wonder if we could look into that and see if that's true. Maybe we should compensate him for that.
I thought we bought that.
That's why I'm not sure.
I don't know that we have a light-up stop sign. I know we bought an LED vest.
Yeah, we have a couple.
he made his own light up by putting flashlights with
Oh,
tape
is that what?
on it and like stuff, but I don't think, we could look into it.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if, someone had told me that he had bought the stop sign himself, and so if he had, I think
Come
we
up with
should.
some stop sign, one down here and one up there,
Yeah, we bought
Whatever.
those signs, yeah.
and didn't we buy those?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
so,
Yeah, he definitely made a contraption of his own, but I don't.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't.
okay.
And I do want to take the opportunity to really acknowledge Adrian. He has gone above and beyond taking this over. Mr. Goodell has a lot of training with this and a lot of experience, and Adrian took that on with none of those things. And so I really appreciate that.
Frogger up there.
I actually stick the sign out first. And I think it hits the sign
Closes
first.
his eyes.
Then when they stop, then I go. So, but thanks.
They're more brazen now, yeah, no fear out there.
Picturing like a
Shane has been
cartoon,
very
you know?
helpful
Yeah, no,
as well.
I agree. It's been a collaborative effort out there, kind of between myself, Shane, and Jocelyn.
Freezing.
I was gonna say, that must get cold.
It's a little chilly at times. Yeah.
All right, thank you. The other thing that I had, I handed out a calendar of,
sorry, can I ask one more question about the bus? So how are you reaching out to find somebody else?
we've got it posted the way we usually post it. We've got it on Indeed, we've got it in a number of free sites. If you've got a different way that you think we can get more reaction,
I'm just wondering if we contacted the town, would they put it on their town website? Because I'm looking for, similar to what we had, an older person that wants just a few hours a week.
I can ask the town if they've got other avenues to get it out there.
I'm trying to think of, so we also have at the town, Gary would know more about this, a message repeater that goes on Comcast or whatever, Metrocast, I never know which one we have. Bulletin board. What about putting it on that? I don't get cable, I get on DirecTV because I'm in the woods, so I don't know how it works, but I know it works.
Okay.
And people do look at that stuff.
I'll talk to them tomorrow, see if we can get it up there.
All right, thank you.
I handed out this year's calendar, the year that we're presently in, and the reason I put this down is we've got a number of snow days. You can see that I marked on here, so far we've had 2 days out initially because of the buses, we've had 2 because of the power loss, and we've had 3 snow days. So you can see as of right now, we're, excuse me, until June 21st, which is a Thursday. Okay, so we've still got plenty of days in June. We've got 6 days, 1 more day 2 more days before we bump into the following week. My suggestion is that we make the March 23rd Teacher Workshop Day, which is our district-wide day. We've already talked about this at the Admin Council. We knew that we were getting quite a few snow days in all of the districts. So my suggestion is to take the March 23 day and make that a student day, and then move that Teacher Workshop Day until the end of the school year, so after the students leave. That will just allow us, instead of 1 more day before we kick into the last week, 2 more student days before we kick into the last week. I don't know how many more we're going to have. I was hopeful that we could get in yesterday, but that didn't work. So that's my suggestion, is that we take the 23rd of March right now and make that a student day so everybody can plan and move that.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Hang on, just say that again, because it does say at the bottom, April 26 and 27 will be used as student days if there are 7 days of school canceled before March 3rd.
Yeah, that is something that we discussed when we developed the calendar last year. I would recommend that the board reconsider that, because, again, we've got the last 5 days in June that are still available. And it always makes me nervous taking April, 2 days in April vacation, because it's going to be very challenging for parents, it's going to be very challenging for students and staff. So, you know, there's a lot of families that have already made plans for April, and my fear is that we're going to, if we go into that week with the 26th and 27th, that they're going to be wasted days.
Yeah, I don't think it's challenging, they're just not going to send their kids to school.
That's the challenge.
Well, I think we should look at that, you know, in the future then, because it does say on here, they will be used.
It certainly does.
Yeah, and I, you know,
It's not shall, though, so will's a little flexible.
well, I think we should just take it off and
Or maybe you should say
not even
may.
do it. Well, I think if this is going to be the recommendation, because parents are not going to, probably not going to send their
right.
children, then we should just take it off totally.
And again, you know,
I mean, if we end up with too many days, then we would have to
if you,
look at it.
if you
but-
take the teacher workshop day, that gives 2 more days, and that's not, I mean, we're going to have to revisit that anyway, because that's not a definite that we may have no more days, we may have 4 more days, I have no idea. But
have
at
to
least that will
negotiate
give us
The
2,
weather on Tuesday?
I'm hopeful that that's going to be okay. The timing has been lousy on the storm so far.
Because we're adding that at the end of the year, we don't have to negotiate that with the teachers.
You've got control of the calendar. I would get in touch with the teachers and just let them know, obviously, as early as possible, but the only, and actually, I talked about this at the Professional Development Committee a couple of weeks ago as well with all of the districts, and just kind of gave them a heads up that this is a possibility. The only other option, really, is to take those 2 days in April vacation, and like I said, I don't think that that's going to be a valuable use of time.
Can I open a discussion that could be an option, and I don't think it's gonna be, but blizzard bags? I know Barnstead does blizzard bags, where they send home the homework to the school, with the students, and I guess it's geographically located, and they get 3, they could use up to 3. So, and they have a really high success, I think they had 98% the last time of people actually bringing it back. You have to have a
You
certain-
need to have over 80% or something
yeah,
like that.
So I don't know if that is, it's too late to implement into this year, or if, you know, but something we might want to think about in the future for next year. I don't know if we can do it this year or not.
I
We
think,
did that 4 or 5 years ago.
yeah, I think that we could in a pinch. It's, I mean, blizzard bags, if you're doing it, there are a lot of other issues that come with that. You know, your classroom teachers, they have the homework and the preparation and those types of things. Your specials, your guidance, your library, your nurse, I mean, a lot of those areas, what is your requirement for them to fulfill that day as well? So, you know, can it be done? Yes, some school districts are doing that. It's a challenge to pull it off well.
I think that we actually talked about this at the calendar committee last year, and I think one of the concerns also was the quality of what's going in it. If you send the kid home with 6 worksheets, like, that's not equivalent to a school day. And I think
Right.
that
I know-
it's just not.
And I don't know what's in there, but I did get a third grader that I know that goes to Bunch, they did science projects. They had to go outside and actually, wait until time how long it would take for the water to freeze, and then do, write a science thing about that. So that was just one of the things that was in the Blizzard bag, so.
I think if that's something that the board's interested in pursuing, I think it's a good conversation to start this year for implementation next year, because if you rush into it, I think Bree's absolutely right. You're going to get six handouts to take home, and, that's not equivalent to a school day in my,
Exactly.
I mean, teachers are much more important to that than that.
But I don't know if there's criteria that we can write that say
Right.
it would need to be regulated, though, because I worry about that very
Right.
thing.
The other thing I've heard some districts do is instead of counting number of days, they count the number of hours.
We looked briefly into that last year and started counting the hours. If you're going to do that, again, you need to start at the beginning of the year and count your hours, because passing time, recess time, lunch time, all of those things need to be taken off your school day. So, it's not as easy as just counting up the hours and reducing some days. It's
Skip lunch, no lunch for you.
working lunch.
Do you remember the fold-out long you passed out at the joint board several months ago?
Yep.
Do you remember what the last statement in that thing is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So it's an interesting thing. I've looked at it at least a dozen times since you passed it out, and I'm sure that you and I would probably disagree on the value of it. I found a lot of value to it, but it ended with,
What is it that you're referring to?
Dr. Godomsky passed, I really meant to talk about it. It's funny that this has come up, calendar. It's a colored fold-out. It folds down, and you fold it up like almost like this, but when it folds down, and it starts in 1900
It's a
to
history of education.
1910,
Yeah.
and schools added this and this and this, and from 1910 to 1920, and we added this and this and this, and it goes up to the current. But it ends with, which I absolutely agree with 110%, and we've not added 1 hour of education. That's what it ends with. And it's really a telling thing. I don't know, maybe you weren't there and didn't get it. I would ask Dr.
I've got
Godomsky if
copies
he
of
has
them.
any extras.
Yeah.
I really thought it was very informative in many ways, but it's absolutely correct. All of the things that we do at school, and I would look at that taken away from education, so I would get in trouble with most of you immediately. But the end result was all of these extra things that we're doing in schools, but we really haven't added any extra school time, so something had to give to add those. And in my opinion, that's education, but that's my opinion. But it is a very, very good demonstration of what schools have taken on over the last century and a little bit more.
Yeah, it really demonstrates that from like 1900 to 1950, 1960, there were a couple of things added, but it wasn't escalating
sure.
very quickly. And then as you get into the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond, everything piled on the plate.
Yes.
And like Tim said, you can only fit so many potatoes in a sack, there's only so much time in a day, and when you add another
Something had to
responsibility.
give. And to me, so whenever, and the only reason I'm bringing this up at this time, I really would like, if you haven't seen it, try to get one. Dr. Godomsky says he has more. I'd love to have a discussion around that sometime. But, so I'm always against eliminating a day of school. It even bothers me to count a half a day as a day sometime if we give them lunch, because the kids need to learn in order to be successful in their later life. But anyway, I just thought I would throw that out. It's something that I've looked at least a dozen times and reread and reread.
So I'll make a motion.
I already have one.
We have 20 days of the school year?
So the initial one was to make the motion to, the initial motion I made was to move the teachers' workshop from March 22nd to the end of the year and have that as a school day. March 23rd to the end of the school year.
Use that as a school.
and use that as a school day.
Second.
All right, so do we have any discussion on that motion specifically? Then Shane can make his.
Nope, that was my motion.
Okay. All right, all in favor of that?
Right.
All right, so that carries unanimously. Was there,
I'd just like to revisit what you brought up, if we use this day again.
Yes.
We're back at 7.
sure,
Because technically, we're back at 6,
well,
so, not really, but in theory.
My only concern is that, you know, we wait and then we're going to be into February. And as Dr. Godomsky said, parents have made discussions. I think we should make the decision tonight. Are we going to use the 26th and 27th of April? Or is that off the table and we're just going to hope that we don't have more than the 6 days left in June that we can use?
I'll give you
Now you'll
this.
have 7.
right, so the last day of school right now is the 20th.
20th.
Correct.
I mean, there are other options, too. I mean, if we got into a bind, I mean, we could add 10 minutes to the day, or 20 minutes to the day. We'd have to obviously have a discussion with the teachers' union and with the support staff union, add up that, and then accumulate enough time for a day or 2 days, or something like that. Some school districts have gone on Saturdays to pick up a day or two. I mean, if we get in a bind, and I'm not suggesting we do either of those, but if we get in a bind, we do have some other options.
Well,
And I
the-
would hope that we don't have 7 more snow days.
Well, me too, but the other thing is isn't there something about school, like even for the teachers' workshop, it can't go past June 30th or 31st or something, not past July 1, you
Yep.
can't go. So if, you know, that's the other thing we have to look at. Now we have 7 technically, but if we happen to have, you know, the boiler break or something like that again, and we have to be out again.
Yeah,
We're
and, I
just-
mean, I think that we're just going to have to revisit this in February again and just see where we're at that point.
I don't want to make any more decisions tonight personally, and I would lean heavily against changing the vacation. I just, people have put money down on vacations, but I don't want to take it off the table.
See where we're at.
Personally, I would really shy away from doing that. It would,
Yeah, I second that too, because you just think about that Deerfield Day, Deerfield Fair Day, right? How many people are missing, and now you're gonna say you're gonna take away some vacation days? I mean, I don't think you're gonna have enough percentage of kids to be in school to actually even count it as a day, so you're playing with that ball of fire, that you have 50% of the kids show up, and you're like, oh, we can't count it.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the way we're leaning, I think next year when we make our calendar, we should just not put that in there then,
Yeah.
right? If that's how we're going with this, because, which I'm okay with, but. So, to reiterate, our last day is scheduled for June 20th at this point. And
At this point.
we'll worry when we get more than 2 more snow days. Right.
And we'll put out information to parents, just letting them know the change in the calendar, so we'll get that out. We got plenty of time. That's all I have. That's all I have.
All right, moving on to our Primex discussion.
Primex discussion, this is the same discussion we had at the joint board level with the CAP program for your property and liability and for your workman's compensation, asking for consideration to extend it out 3 more years. And what that would be is for your workman's compensation program, that would be through 2022. And that guarantees a maximum of a 10% increase annually with that one. And with the property and liability, it's through 2022, June 30. And that is with guarantees, with the extension guarantees no more than a 9% increase. So that's for your consideration.
So basically what we'd be doing is entering into a contract with them for the next 3 years?
You would be, right now, you're in the CAP program, and that expires June of 2020. And this would just extend that out 3 more years.
And it's pretty much the same what we had.
It's the same that you had, it just extends the cap, so when the increases come in, you're in a big pool that would cap potential increase. If it comes in lower than that, you get the lower percentage increase, but it can't go any higher than that.
Motion to approve the Primex Workmen's Compensation Program and Property and Liability Program with a maximum cap of 10% increase for the workmen's comp and 9%, maximum 9% increase for the property and liability program through 2022.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Ask me to repeat it because I don't.
I was reading in it, and the reason why they extended it too, and it's the same as last, is that we don't have a big workers' comp claim and the high liability.
Correct.
So 10%'s a bit of a jump.
Yeah, we do a lot of work with Primex. Linda Osborne does a really nice job at utilizing the trainings and things that they have available, so you're right, I mean, we're in pretty good shape.
Any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye. Watch tomorrow, we get to like the biggest workers' comp.
We're capped.
Okay. Next up on our agenda is committee reports. Have we had any committee meetings in the past month, because we haven't met for a while?
The budget committee.
With budget committee, yep, in public hearing last week,
Yeah.
last Thursday.
Last yes, Wednesday was the town and Thursday was the school.
Anything interesting from there? No? Everything went well? Strategic planning, Ms. Gunter, were you at that on
I was.
Thursday? How'd that go?
We met last Thursday. Mr. Miller kind of consolidated all of our responses to the strategic issues that we had from the forum. And we kind of went around and voted on our level of agreement or disagreement with those various things. So I think he's planning on presenting those in a list next time, and we'll decide which ones to keep and which ones are not exactly where we want to be. So we'll be doing that next Thursday for our second to last meeting with Joe.
Next Thursday, we should put that in our agenda. What day would that be?
124.
The 24th?
I think so, right?
I guess it's too late to put it in here, so.
5th.
25th. Oh, 25th? Yeah.
Okay. Any other committees meet that I am not recalling right now?
No, but I'd like the board to consider taking me off the facilities. With the two loss of our officers, I work Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to like 4 or 5 p.m. every single day, Monday through Friday. I don't have the time right now until we get new officers in. So I don't know if someone on the board wants to be with Tim. We haven't met in some time because of the new schedule changes. And for me to request time off without having additional officers is going to be very hard to do.
Okay, so you want to resign from the committee?
From that, yeah, from the facilities committee and not someone else. Because especially coming up to, you know, it being the end of the year and what the building really needs.
Right.
So,
Do we need to replace him because we could have
we
possibly?
could have one
Well, and we could possibly have 2 new board members.
soon, yeah.
So do we need to
I think,
replace him at this
I don't know,
point?
I think
is
we
what
should
mean.
meet sooner than later because we haven't met in some time. So,
Well, and I think one board member, I mean, if Tim's in agreement with that, one board member for now until March, I mean, it's,
Well,
There's always
unless,
been one in the past.
unless somebody else wants to do it.
I'm fine with one.
yeah.
I'm okay with one, unless if anybody wants to be on the facilities committee, we can do a swap, but, well, what if we just leave you on the facilities committee and if you don't make it, you don't make it? If you do, you do.
Okay.
Does that work?
That works.
And then, yeah, we'll redo it in March, anyway. Okay, on to old business, our parking lot items, we have the tractor, which is in the CIP plan, if I recall correctly. So we will be working on getting a quote on that at some point.
Was it? I thought it's like for next year though, CIP 2018, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so it's like coming up.
Why don't I just move
Yeah, I just,
that to the bottom?
yeah, or maybe put the date on there, for 2018.
Or a budget discussion or something.
Yeah, figure out where we need to be with that. I think probably the next thing to do is get a quote and see where we are with our budget. Company presentation, competency presentation.
That's what you just did today.
We will have another one in about a month, 2 months?
Spring, I mean, it depends.
Okay, so next, we'll put it in for spring.
It's like March or April, depending on how much we have to report.
Why don't we put it in April, because we've got the,
You gotta reorg in March.
Yeah, reorg in March and
Yeah,
stuff, yeah.
you got all that.
All right, so competency presentation, part 2. School board newsletters on an ongoing failure. My apologies. The boiler tank, we need to have discussions in March on that.
That's what Shane was just saying.
Yep.
Put out the RFPs and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
we should get those RFPs out as soon as possible. No? You got, I thought you were gonna shake your head no.
No.
Oh, okay. We'll take it.
actually, why don't I move that back until February for the RFP? Because if you're going to be discussing your end-of-the-year funds, it's going to take a while to turn that through. So we can touch base with Tom and get an RFP with Linda.
And I think,
Back to February.
and I think for the solar panels, we'll wait till March or April to start discussion on that. We'll put it on an agenda at some point.
Should we add the report cards to the parking lot? When you said March, maybe the second meeting in March or whatever, is that,
I normally attend the first meeting. I'd be
Oh,
happy
okay,
to attend the
so-
second meeting if that's what you want.
that's right, this is the second because each could,
Right.
that's right, okay.
We don't want to do the first meeting in March, or, I don't remember exactly when voting is, but,
It's March 13th.
so it'd be the second meeting, that will be our organizational meeting. So, okay, so that
First
was
meeting in April.
first meeting in April.
We'll just plan on the first meeting in April.
Okay.
For the report cards, yeah. Just so that they're on there, and
Yep.
I'm sure Kat won't forget them, but
Yep, I think it's a good
so
idea.
it's there.
On the discussion of solar panels, can we, is there like a company or something that could come out and talk to us about that?
There's, so in Nottingham, we had Revision Energy, and then another local company out of Barrington come talk about solar panels.
Yeah, I just want to know, like, hey, this is, in 10 years, how much you're going to be saving, or whatever. and-
Yeah, they can give you
Yeah.
that. They can give you that. The other thing, when you're talking about the boiler replacement, that's why I sort of stopped myself, is right now through the Public Utilities Commission, if you're replacing boilers and consider a pellet boiler, and I know nothing about that, you would want to talk to an installer to see if it would work for your building. You can get 40% of your installation cost, up to $65,000 back from the Public Utilities Commission right now. So I don't know if that's something that the Facilities Committee want to talk about.
They use them in schools, though?
They do use some. Commercial pellets are big right now.
Some
Yep.
schools have switched.
Yep.
It's a wholesale switch, but
It's a wholesale switch, but the incentive is definitely there.
I wonder how much pellets you got there.
I don't know.
well, some
And
of
they'll
our,
tell you at the public, you call the Public Utilities Commission, and the woman's gonna tell you, just like she told me, she goes, you really need to find an installer and have that conversation with the installer, because it may work and it may not.
Well, so I guess that's another discussion that we need to have sooner rather than later, if that's something that we're going, thinking about doing, if it's something that could save us, $10,000 a year, then I think it's a good discussion to have on top of the solar panels. If these are two things that can save the taxpayers money, I think they're good discussions to have. So if there's a company that we can find to come in and talk to us about it, I think, February or March would be.
yeah, and some of them they're not pellets, it's wood chips. Because they've got some dry chips and they've got wet chips and green chips.
It's like
and
a smoker?
whatever, something like that.
Right, so
But it's interesting because when did the oil spike? 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when the oil spiked, everybody was looking into wood chip boilers because it was obviously cheaper and so expensive. And now, since the oil has come down so far over the last couple of years, the savings really is not, what it once was, but certainly an option.
So wood chips uses a different sort of incentive structure from the Public Utilities Commission. They have a yearly grant system, not a rebate system. so it's a little more labor intensive. I can tell you that one of your neighboring school districts, the cost for a wood chip boiler system was around $400,000, and they made it to Governor's Council with a $150,000 incentive grant. But it's a different kind of incentive, and that one opens up,
$150,000 a year?
no, $150,000 off of the $400,000 price. But that uses a grant structure, and typically those grants open up in September, where I know right now, if a pellet system was feasible, and I don't know that, I'm not recommending that, that's a rebate system, and there's money in that rebate system available right now.
So is that something that maybe we can get the information for, like the second meeting in February, so that we have the information? Is that enough time? A month?
Well, you'd be having a commercial installer come in and evaluate the building, right? That's
Yeah.
really what you need to do.
Well, I think we need to
Is that an
look
ex-
at, too, this is what we're paying for oil, this is, I mean, they can't tell us 10 years down the road how much pellets are gonna cost, but this is what pellets cost now, and, they probably know more about how they're going to go up, and this is, over the next 10 years, will it save
Right.
us money?
Right, but my point is, if it's not feasible for the building, does that information necessarily matter?
Right, but, so
so
if they
is
come
that-
in and do the look at the thing, it's
Can we get
feasible.
that done sooner than later? And then-
Right.
I mean, is that a task for the facilities committee, or would you like, how do you want to proceed with this?
Don't look at me.
You're the
Right?
villains.
I mean,
Well, I guess, I guess we're asking, because we don't really know, we want the school to be evaluated on what is the best option. Is to replace these boilers with new boilers, or go with pellet or wood chips? And I don't know how we start that process.
What's the best most cost-effective?
Well,
20 years.
let us do some digging and see what we can find out for information. Certainly not in my area of expertise. so-
right. I mean, the data you get from the solar energy companies is going to be a little more static and reliable, because they know you get this much sun, and your building's rated for this. But the other piece you need to consider there is your roof replacement.
Right, and we had said
When's that going to be replaced?
And how does that play into it? But I think that's something when they come in to do the presentation that they can present to us. I mean, I can't believe that we're the only place or building that's ever needed a roof replacement at the same time. Where do they fit into that whole schema and everything? Where did we put it on the CIP plan if it's 10 years down the road?
Do you
How
do
long do the
solar
solar
right after
panels?
that? Right.
So I'm sure that they could talk.
Well, let us nose around a little bit and see what we can find out.
Yeah, I think sooner rather than later, the discussion of, if we are gonna have a surplus that we're gonna spend out of, or if it's something we wanna take out of our capital.
I mean, because obviously the boilers need to be replaced. That's like almost a critical.
Does it cost to have somebody come in and evaluate? To tell us which is,
Again, not my area of expertise, but we'll look into it. I don't think it necessarily costs money to have
well,
somebody.
my thing is, I was going to make a motion to say, if it doesn't cost anything, to have you guys just have someone come in and look at it. But if it's gonna cost money, then I would have no idea exactly how much to say, let's
Seems like
do
the
it.
first person we should be talking to is Tom. Tom has dealt with
That's
those for many,
definitely
many
important,
years.
too.
And see what Tom has to say and who he would recommend and things like that. Pellets are as susceptible as gas or oil or diesel or whatever. There was a huge shortage just a couple of years ago of pellets. Many, many people. I sell some firewood. My wife is trying to get me out of that since my recent accident. But anyway, many people went into pellets 3, 4, 5 years ago. And a lot of them, and I would say as many as half, have backed out of that. Because they're almost more work in many ways. So if you put in pellet boilers, you're going to have a feeding system to the boilers, which is probably human, unless we can get a robot or something. I mean, I know that there's feeders and stuff like that, but there's a lot of other stuff that entails, so it's not as cut and dried as you might think. But, it certainly would be interesting to get somebody that knows about these things to come in and speak to us. And my first person I would want to talk to is Tom Sayers.
Yeah, we'll talk to Tom, and we'll also, we're going through something similar to this over in Stratford, because we're talking about replacing the oil boilers with propane boilers, which is a little easier for storage. You don't have the buried oil tank and stuff. So we'll fish around and see if there's any information we can find, and see what we can bring forward to you as quickly as possible.
We could get robots built by the school.
We're on our way.
All right, on our school board timeline for January, I think we're all set with most of the items on here. The only things I see here is discussion of athletic program / coaching with the board. I assume this must be for spring sports. I don't know what, I'm not really sure that why we have this entry on here. I don't know what discussion is needed.
If I remember correctly, it was a reminder that we look at, if we're going to post, if we have openings for spring sports or those types of things, now is the time to do it, so we get them in place. I think that's why it was on there.
I thought it was about volleyball.
It could be, it could well be about volleyball.
I think we had
about
one for
opening up-
volleyball on there, too.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's, what athletic programs are we going to be doing this spring, and do we want to make any changes?
Season's coming up.
Right. Season's coming up, so now's the time to do that. Do you anticipate any changes from our current? Any desire for anything different?
I don't, and I haven't heard anything from our athletic director about that, but I can check in with her.
The other item on here that we haven't touched upon is summer school planning.
Yeah, she's touched on
Yep.
it in her meet, in her.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Young did.
Okay, yep.
It's ongoing.
It's a very brief touch, but it's
All right.
underway.
I heard you.
All right. So that's our January timeline. Everybody should probably take a look at February to see kind of what's coming up, I believe.
What's the discussion for the sixth grade? What is the discussion we have to have?
We're going.
Are you, Mr. Wells?
What's that?
Are you going?
Mira Vista? At this moment, yes.
Me
It
too.
could change, but
Coming up in February, that's maybe notable is the board, it says board evaluation policy BA. I believe what that refers to is our self-evaluation as a board before we become a new board. So something to keep in mind. We'll have to, if we can get the board goals perhaps in our packet for next time. So that's something we can look into. And then we'll have the wonderful fun time of making new goals in the March. Anything else for our agenda for our next meeting on February 1st? The one thing I was going to put on there is we do need to make a presentation for the deliberative session. I'll work on that. Hopefully I'll have something by the 1st that we can share with you guys, and maybe I'll send it out even earlier with email or something like that. So send any feedback my way if you come across that. Anything else for the agenda? Not yet? Okay, let me know.
What do you have on there so far?
That's it. And potentially some boiler, if we can get there quick enough.
The grant information, we're going to put in the next one.
Grant expenditures.
Let's see here. Crossing guard. That's it.
What did we say about the solar panels? We're gonna wait until March.
they're gonna dig around and start looking into it.
So I know they said boilers, but are they gonna bring that back to the next meeting, or is that for March?
Well, that's for like March, April timeframe. All right, we have a strategic planning meeting next Thursday, January 25th. After that, we have our next meeting is February 1st, and another regular board meeting February 22nd. There's a joint board meeting at the SAU office on February 19th. And of course, our deliberative session is February 8th, with a snow day set for February 10th at 9 a.m. That's Thursday. Is there any,
The
yes,
February 22nd date?
yes.
It's not the third Thursday, that's the 4th?
February 22nd, yes, you're right.
15th.
Should be the 15th. Misprinted on here. What's the, no, yeah, 15th.
First, 8th,
First and
15th,
15th.
22nd.
Yep, yep. Thank you for catching this, yeah. Yep. Okay, is there any closing public comment? No. Any board members like to take this opportunity for public comment?
I just got one. I have to leave for 2 weeks military training, January 26th to February 9th, so I will not be at the February 1st meeting or the D session.
Oh, while you're at it, I will not be at the deliberative session either. We had originally scheduled it for February 5th, which was
Yep.
good for me, but you guys changed it last time. I missed that meeting to the 8th. I am going to Montana for work for a week, so the 5th was good, the 8th is not, so I'll not be in attendance for that.
But if we have a snow day, I will be here on the 10th. Is it right? The snow day is the 10th.
Oh, the snow, oh, yes, if it's a snow day that day, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you meant if we had a snow day between now
So I'll
and
pray
then.
for snow.
But we banned snow days.
We're trying.
Make a policy.
Yeah, right.
No more snow days.
All right, we're going to close public comment unless there's somebody else has anything to say. I don't think we have need for non-public session to close.
Nope.
So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.